Uh, Hello? Yes, is this John? Is this John? Yeah, it's Bert. I saw you were doing work. Yes, yes. I run Facebook ads, lead generation. Oh, yeah. Okay, don't worry about it. Thank you. Today, we're going to talk about anxiety and social skills and how that relates to business. So, maybe you're that person that is really trying to get into cold calls, but somehow you're struggling. You can't really pick up the phone, you're trying, but you're feeling like that resistance inside. That's anxiety. Even though you're not really speaking with anyone yet, you're already experiencing it. And that's because of the fear of anticipation. So, what you're really fearing when you're thinking about it and you're not able to do it, you're fearing that you're gonna pick up the phone and you're gonna dial in and you're gonna call this person, and this person is gonna start some debate, it's gonna maybe hurt your feelings, maybe you're gonna get rejected, and the anticipation of that is what makes you feel anxiety. It makes you feel that resistance and it makes you feel unable to pick up the phone and dial. Now, what happens with anxiety is that the more you do it, the better you become at it. So, the more you practice the calls, the better you will get, and the more your resistance that you will become. So, at the start, you might be feeling anxious that this person or you are actually going to start a debate, and that's going to affect your emotions and make you feel sweaty and uncomfortable. And it's probably going to do that in the beginning, to be fair, especially if you're pushing yourself in a healthy way. But uh, as you practice this is going to get better, like lots of things in life. But this is a very crucial thing, I think, for everyone, at least to improve in, and especially for executives and CEO. Like, this skill is like the number one skill, is like people skills, in my opinion. If you're a real CEO or executive, chances are that you're doing a lot of sales, leadership, and communication with people. So for that, it's going to be really important that you learn to manage your states and your emotions, uh, and basically becoming less anxious and also knowing how to master that better. So everyone is a bit different in this. For some people, it takes a longer time than others. Some people are like, those natural extroverts that are very talkative. They can be a little bit abrasive without, you know, it doesn't hurt them. What actually sometimes does end up hurting them because they're not taking into regard the other person's feeling. But usually for extroverts, it comes a little bit easier to be more charismatic and things like that. But still, in the long term, it's actually something that can harm them a little bit, because what we see is usually introverts who do a lot of work on their speaking skills. Usually they end up after several years becoming better than extrovert people, because they've really learned how everything works and how they can manage this. And also they're just much better at empathizing with people and understanding their feelings. So they know when they are too abrasive, and then they can turn that back. And if you're practicing a lot, you'll also know when you will be not enough, or when you will be too shy and not expressive enough. So that's also something you will improve at. Like I said, for some people, they can already see some improvements after several weeks, but it depends. It depends from person to person. Like, some people, it's going to take a much longer time. Um, but either way, if your goal is to be an executive, a CEO, even if you're an extrovert, it's going to be difficult and it's going to take time, and it's going to be a challenge. So you're not going to get there in 1 month either way, but still for some people it's going to be harder than others. It's going to take more effort and more time. For me, it took me 9 years to get to this point where I would say, a bit better than average right now, but I'm still very far from like the best speaker and the most charismatic I could be. So, I mean, I still have a long way to go, but I came from a place where I was very, very shy. I was naturally, as a kid, very shy and introverted. And so this took me a lot of time to get to this point. What then happened is I then also started spending more time behind the computer. So that also made me a bit more shy. And then at some points when I was like 24 years old, I started taking action into that. And I started, I made a decision that I was going to improve my social skills, because I noticed like I was spending way too much time behind my computer playing video games and, whatever. So my personal way back then was to approach women and go out and ask women on dates and things like that. Now, you don't have to do that if you don't want that. It's a whole other can of worms that can be a bit of a distraction as well. But one thing it did for me is it made me more confident in myself. It took me a long time, but it made me more confident, and it also gave me more insights into people. Also, actually understanding that people, have emotions, and actually also after several years of having practiced my social skills and speaking skills, I also noticed that actually generally people have like a good intent. It's just like you have to kind of understand how people work. And yeah, like a lot of times when people act kind of, negative, is because something is hurting them, or maybe they're not as developed. But I feel like usually people at their core are like, they are group people, and they naturally want to support other people as long as the environment is good enough to enable to do that. So that's what I found. We can talk a lot about how it relates to business. So of course, sales is one very obvious example. If you want to be good at sales, you're going to have to learn to manage your anxiety. And I think that's going to be, it's not, if you take sales, this is sales, then this part is managing your anxiety. So it's, I would say, like a really big part, depending on your perspective. But no matter which perspective you take, it's always going to be a really big part of it is going to be how confident you are and how calm you are, and just how much you can manage your internal states and anxiety. That's going to be a really, really, really big part of sales. So another big part of sales is going to be the social skills, and that's different, because managing your anxiety is just managing your calmness and the readiness, the way you can respond, and the way you can just be open. So that's going to go a long way, but still you need to learn some technical skills. I guess technical is maybe not the right word depending on the way you see things, but you need to learn skills to understand how people feel. So I guess that could also be phrased as like emotional understanding. And that's one big part. You understand how they feel. So you need to be able to read that and feel that, which is not always easy. And then once you know that, you also need to understand how you can actually influence them. So how can you take someone who is feeling a little bit under the weather to actually make them feel more enthusiastic and positive? That's a really big part of sales. Also, if you get more into advanced sales, what you're gonna end up hearing a lot is that a good salesman is like a good therapist. So actually, you need to dig in people pain a bit in a healthy way, and then you need to give them room to understand what situation they are in, and then you need to ask them questions to make them come up with an answer for themselves. Now, of course, it's a little bit different than sales because we're going to be selling them our solution. So we have a little bit more of an incentive, but this incentive should always take in mind the well-being of the person, because if you're not going to be doing that, you're not going to be making sales. You're going to be perceived as manipulative. People are not going to trust you. And trust is something really, really important if you want to get clients. If they don't trust you, they're not going to go with you because they're going to fear that maybe you're going to stab them in the back or something like that. So there's basically two big components. It's value and trust. So you could go to someone and you could tell them, hey, I'm gonna do something for you. I'm not sure how it's gonna end up working, but I'm gonna do my best. And if you go to your mom, maybe that's gonna be an enticing offer for her because she cares about you. But if you go to a stranger, that's not gonna be an enticing offer for 99% of people, because there's no value there. You're not providing anything. You can't really help this person. Now, there might be trust there because you're being honest, and so that can also go a long way. But trust alone is not enough. Just like value alone is not enough. You need both. So you need something to help this person forward, which is the value. And then you also need to make them feel and believe that you're going to be able to take them there. And not just that, but you're also going to do that for this person. You're not going to cheat on them, and you're going to be reliable, basically. So it's both value and trust. That goes for sales, but that goes for social interactions as well, by the way. So the thing is, no matter how you look at it, there are several techniques and tactics you can use to really improve your anxiety levels and make you feel less emotional. But at the end of the day, I don't think like that. I don't think like, well, here's a tactic I can use, here's a tactic I can use, here's a tactic I can use, there's a tactic I can use. That's a silly way of going about this. This is not, you're not programming some software where you need to be very technical. This is more of like a feeling. Of course, there's the micro. So there's things you need to be aware of, especially if you're new to this, things that you're going to need to learn. You're going to need to learn that your body language is important. So you're going to need to be aware of that. That's going to be the micro. There's going to be the way you speak. So you're going to have to be aware that if you're articulate, that's going to be helpful. And if you're not articulate, that's not going to be people are going to be confused, and it's not going to be received well by people. So articulation is something that's also very important. Your general confidence level, but that's something more ethereal, even though it's still very important. Some personal tics you may have, maybe you're like someone who leans in a lot, or maybe you're someone who always ends your sentences on a high pitch, like the way I just did. You need to learn how to talk to people in like downwards inflection, which means that when you end your sentences, it's a little bit like you're giving an order. But you have to, at the start, if you're struggling with confidence, that's something that's good for you to learn to do this gradually. At some point, though, you're going to have to learn not being aggressive, but being assertive, which means that sometimes you might have to add a little bit of playfulness in your voice, or actually maybe even add some like upwards inflection sometimes. But you're the general state you want to be in as an executive is someone who is a leader, and so you're going to need to have more of that downwards inflection, but you're still going to have to be empathic towards people, and you're still going to have to understand how they feel as well. So there is also a balance to be had there. You can't just be like a monster and spitting and ordering everyone. Like if you're giving someone an order, if you're being tough with someone, it should come from a place of productiveness, conscientiousness, and love, basically, because that's the only way that people are going to appreciate that. And even some people even will still not appreciate that, because some people can't deal with authority. So then you're going to be able to have to manage those people as well. Maybe those are not the best people to work with, but I mean, not everyone is going to respond as well to authority than others. So you're going to have to adjust your message a bit depending on the person. But in general, if you're being like, leadership in general should come from a place of love and a place of conscientiousness. So in that way, there's like the little micro skills you can learn and be aware of, like the way you speak and the way, your body language, eliminating certain like weird tics that you have. Those are all things that you need to be aware of. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to just taking action and the core skill of everything, which is discipline. Just doing the work every day, visualizing yourself becoming that person, doing the daily actions. So it doesn't matter if you're just practicing your social skills or if you're actually practicing sales in your business. You're going to have to motivate yourself to start talking, start picking up the dials, and start actually kind of debating with people. So if they're giving you an answer and you notice that, well, this answer is kind of doesn't really make sense, then you debate with that, and you figure out a good way to convince this person that you can basically help them and that your service or your product is going to be useful to them. And that's something that you're going to have to learn, to not just take people's answer for what they are, but to actually go a little bit against that, depending on whether you need to or not. But I think a good rule for sales, especially if you're new to sales, is just always go against it in a positive way. So it always needs to be in a calm and constructive way. But you always need to be aware, like, there's something I can do, there's something I can say here, there's some kind of counter I can have. I'm going to be very, very empathic. I'm going to be very constructive. But I'm not going to take this answer. I'm not going to take a no. There's some way I got to be able to help my business grow, and there's some way I got to be able to help this other person as well. That's going to be a good mindset in sales. Now, that's what anxiety does to you. Because if you let anxiety get to you, you're not going to be able to do that. So it just takes practice. It takes practice. Do the reps. Start doing something that's feels a little bit more risky, that doesn't feel as natural to you. And eventually you will grow into that person.